all of you that arrived and trooped it out with me in the hallway for a solid 60 minutes while we were locked out. You guys made my entire day. Thank you so much. So sorry about that. We're starting a little, I can't forget about you guys. We're starting a little bit later, so we're going to skip a couple things. I had this super fancy schmancy community building activity, but we're going to skip it just for the sake of time. I went to a PD last week, and they talked about how we shouldn't start with icebreakers because the language sounds so negative. And they said the new thing is community building, so I stole that because I thought it was kind of cool. But really briefly, first of all, welcome, welcome. If this is your first PD, welcome also. I hope that everyone who's joining us for the first time kind of already has an idea of what CUNY LINCT to Success is. If not, later on today we're going to show you where you can get all that information so everybody's on the same page. This is our second PD of the year, so I kind of know all of you already, and I'm really, really happy to see you guys again. So today we're going to shift gears a little bit. Last month we focused on kind of going over the program because, as most of you know, there's been some changes. We were formerly at home in college, but now we're called CUNY LINCT to Success because we merged with a program through Graduate NYC. So now not only do we support high school seniors during their last year of high school and during the summer, now we also support them during their first year of college. So that's the main change. So today, as you can see, we're using the back wall. Sorry about that. But the goals are going to be to review the purpose and reporting capabilities of Apricot Data System. Kate Solinger is joining me today. You probably all know her via email. She's our new database administrator. And then we're also going to have two other guest speakers, Sindel Harris, a CUNY admissions counselor, and Joseph Levetsky, a staff attorney through CUNY Citizenship Now. So that brings us to our next 3 points. The other goals are to learn new and current CUNY admissions policies. There's been a couple changes to our admissions policy, so Sindel is going to go through that. And then we're also going to learn college access and admission policies regarding undocumented and foster care involved students. During the first PD, we gave out a survey asking you guys to kind of tell us what topics you would like to see shown during PDs. And a lot of people expressed that they wanted to learn a little bit about these specific special populations. So we got a couple guest speakers to talk about that. And then we're going to end the day after lunch kind of digging into the rest of the sessions of the curriculum. Okay? So without further ado, I'm going to let Kate take over for the Apricot piece.
Thanks. I have been emailing you guys, and thank you for your patience with all of my emails, which I'm sure you have memorized there. So I'm the new database administrator for LINCT to Success. So I work with the data for all three of those components of the program that Monica just mentioned, which is LINCT, so you guys, Bridge to College, and then Strive for Success when they're freshmen in CUNY schools. I work to help with the data collection and the data that we create and generate ourselves. And then the really fun part is, once we have all that data, we can create really cool reports and tease out some best practices that we can then share across the program and really improve. So I'm here to talk about Apricot today, which is our key data collection website. The most important thing to know about Apricot is that it's customizable. So we make it do what it needs to do for us, which is really cool. I'm in charge of those customizations, so if you ever think of more data we need to be collecting or more reports that you would like to see, you come and talk to me. Like I mentioned, Apricot is used by all three components of the LINCT to Success program. And some of the things that we have in there, just to give you a sense, because it's probably the first time you're hearing about Apricot. Did you hear about Apricot during the combined PD? I think Teresa introduced it, right? Okay. So this also is going to be an introduction, and you're not going to be working in it until after your next PD, during which I hope to do a training. So I don't want you to be intimidated. I just want to give you a taste of it today, and you don't need to take scrupulous notes because you're not going to be working in it quite yet. So some of the data that we have in there, we have all your students, we have which high school they're enrolled at, we're going to get their CAT scores in there, we're going to have information about their application to CUNY, so if they submitted it, if they submitted all their paperwork, what paperwork is missing. And then once these students are in Bridge to College, And then when they're in their freshman year of college and they have a Strive for Success student success leader, these mentors are going to enter in notes about them that we call advisory notes. If you're familiar with social work, then you would be familiar with that idea of keeping track of contact that you make with your mentee. Once we have all this data in there and more data from other sources, like CUNY First, we can create reports. So we can, I'm sure you're going to be really anxious to get your CAT scores report. That's a basic one that we can create for you. And then also reporting on post-secondary plans. You know, how many of your students are actually planning at the beginning of the summer to enroll in school? And then at the end of the summer, how many of them actually do enroll in the fall? So really interesting stuff that we can get out of Apricot. So for you guys specifically, since you, as part of your work, you're managing, oh, thank you, you can just sign in here. Let me find this. So as part of your work, you're managing this application process with your students so you know which schools they're applying to. So that's something that you can contribute to this building of the student profile that we do in Apricot and all the information that we track on the students. And what's exciting for you is you can see, because we can report back to you, how these students do in the future. So after they leave you, where do they matriculate if they do? And how many of your graduating seniors, for example, versus how many of your LINCT students actually matriculated in the fall after they graduated? How many went to a particular CUNY campus? That's something that we'll be able to report on. We're going to be developing these reports specific to your high school. So I'm going to take your input. We're going to develop something that would be useful for you. I'm sure you're interested in how our program is doing in general, but you also want to know how you're doing. So if all of your students are going to BMCC, maybe you want to beef up on your knowledge of BMCC so that you can respond to that interest of your student body. So I thought there was one more slide in there. So I'm going to, which is just fine because you're not going to be going into Apricot yet. So there's one more slide with the address for Apricot. And I'm going to go in there quickly and do a quick walk around to you. Just to give you an idea of what it looks like so that when you do finally get in there, you're a little familiar with it. I will share this address. I'll share this address and your username and your password ahead of when you're going to be working in there. I'll be emailing this information to you. So we're going to take a look in there just to give you a sense of all the really rich data that we have on your students and how you guys have sort of a unique lens on a certain area of data that we've been missing that will be really great to complete the student profile. Does anybody have any questions?
And you said it has the placement scores?
That's right. Sorry. So once we get those CAT results, we're going to share those with you as soon as we get them, but we're also going to have them in Apricot. And that's going to be helpful because then we can do sort of this data analysis of students who scored very well on the CAT test, presumably because they took these courses, these LINCT courses. Did they have a higher matriculation rate than the ones who are the other bridge students, the graduating seniors who did not participate in LINCT? So it'll be really interesting to sort of tie the two together and really see the advantages of this program. Yeah.
And we're going to have to input every student who's participating?
Nope, we take care of that for you. So one of my key roles, which I didn't mention, is I do all of this data stuff, but I try to make it as painless as possible for you guys. So for example, with the roster information, I just wanted like 5 or 6 data points, and then I'll get the rest, you know. And I know which school they go to because you're sending it to me. So I don't need you to put a column in there saying for each student which school they belong to because it's coming from you. So I take care of everything that I can for you. And then I load those students into Apricot. And then once they're in there, we're going to add the CAT scores. We're going to add other information. Yeah, I don't want you to be sitting in there going, you know, John Smith, you know. Yeah, that would be great. And one more thing one housekeeping thing I forgot to mention that Monica reminded me of. The roster files that I've been requesting from you guys, thank you so much to those of you who did get it to me quickly. I know that is really difficult to do in the beginning of the school year with all the programming changes for your students. For those of you who haven't gotten it to me yet or who have open questions with me about it, please finalize those because we're behind schedule now, and the reason is once we get that information, then I can figure out which of those students are eligible for LINCT, and from that we know who's going to be participating in the cohort testing for the CAT, and then we know which of your students would get that scholarship for the CUNY application fee. So it's really important that we have enough time to process all of that work by finishing this roster file. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question with the qualification portion, right? So
Mhm.
below the ELA scores.
Yep, yeah.
I'm also looking at their English courses, all of their academic classes.
We
Graduation
focus,
What?
focus on the region score.
Well, that's
Yeah,
okay, yes.
yeah.
So, because in the past, the students had to be on track for graduation, with their courses. So
Right.
Are you leaving that to us to decide?
Yes.
Which I think is better,
yeah.
because sometimes it looks like they're not on track, and then we're able to get those courses in throughout the year to get them on track.
Because you know how to figure that out. Yeah, and
That's left up to the schools, to the counselors, and when they kind of audit the records and kind of see what students actually on track to graduate, the only thing on our end that we review is the region score. So if it hasn't been communicated, the assumption is that you guys on your end have already reviewed that, and you're sending this roster list of students you know are on track for graduation, whether it's a June or an August graduation, but are on track for graduation and are fitting that eligibility criteria to be part of the LINCT program.
I also know there was talk of changing how you were going to receive social security numbers. And is it going through the apricot, or is it going to go through the share file?
share file, that's exactly it. So for this first roster file that I collected from you, I did not need the social security number because we want to cut down on transferring that sensitive information. For the CAT testing, I believe we will have to include it because they don't have an ample ID at CUNY yet, so CUNY wants to know who they are, so they need the SSN. We will use share file, which is a secure website that you can log into and download the file. And I know I'm throwing a lot of websites at you, but it's just those two, and share file is pretty straightforward. So I'll give you a link in your email. You click on that link and it'll prompt you for your username and password, which I'll share with you all. And then it will open up the file, download it, and then you have it, you can share it with everybody at your school once you have it onto your school's servers. That way I'm not emailing the social security number. Yeah, I appreciate that. We have to make sure that we keep that data secure.
I've used
Absolutely.
it. No problem. Thank you.
Okay, great.
And also,
Yeah.
sorry, just to give you guys a heads up, there's CUNY, and we're gonna have a PD about this in December. CUNY's actually changing their policy around CAT testing, and right now students who go to take the CAT exam don't need an MPL-ID. Coming, I believe it's January, don't quote me on that, every
Yeah.
student who goes to take the CUNY assessment test will need an MPL-ID. So we're gonna have someone from the testing office come in December and talk through that process because it's brand spanking new, so even I don't have that much information, but I hope we can answer your
I was
question.
gonna say, last year, I had a student who did not have a social, and they provided one for that student, an ID,
Yeah.
and that was the
The
ID that
info.
tracked.
That might be. Mhm.
So it's going to be that process, but for
Exactly.
all of the students.
Exactly, it's gonna be the
Yep.
same thing, but for
Yep.
all students.
That's a good
Yeah.
point.
Um,
Yeah, I think you're next.
I received an email, I think it was from you, regarding that you didn't receive my roster.
Mhm.
My supervisor said she sent it to you before I went to let me know if you have it. But if not, I have it on my desktop, I can send it to you.
Yeah, if you could email it to me and then I can cross-check, because it's possible that I did miss an email in my inbox from your supervisor, but that would be great if you could. Unfortunately, I can't stay the entire day, but please send me an email or call my phone number that Monica had included and let me know the status of your roster file. Thank you for asking about that.
The students who took college now classes have an implied number already.
Mhm.
So my students usually know their number, so how would that work?
So when we get to the point, hopefully we use the same ample ID and we don't create a new one for them, right? Because you don't want duplicates. So when we get to that point, we're still finding out, like Monica said,
You mean in
from.
regards to the assessment test
Yeah.
with the new policy?
Right.
I'm gonna assume that they wouldn't give them an alternative or a duplicate MPL-ID number
Yeah.
because the way that it is in the system, it's one number per student. So, you know, obviously, this is a new policy, so we haven't even kind of been processed through the whole thing, but just kind of knowing the way that that side works, I'm gonna assume that if they already have an MPL-ID, they should be fine. It's more for students who don't have one, they won't be able to use their SSN.
But I appreciate that point. We're gonna have to
Yeah.
make sure that when they develop this new policy, they take that into account, for
Definitely.
sure. Did you have a question?
Will the same procedure be for those who have an IEP? Like, we have to call directly to the school and bring in the IP?
The IEP
Yeah, for students who have
that
IP.
need services through the accessibility office.
Yes, because I remember last
Yes.
year I had to bring in to mail
Yes.
the IP beforehand. Is that going to be the same?
It would be the exact same procedure. So for students who have an IEP or require special services or services through the accessibility office, when testing time comes, it is the responsibility of the school or the guidance counselor to connect them with the accessibility office of the testing site. So if they're going to Hunter or York or Hostos, the schools have to connect them in case they need extra support during the testing. Yeah.
I'll just jump into Apricot for now. So Monica brought up a student, Raul, who did participate in LINCT last year and Bridge and is now a freshman in college this year.
Raul went to Queens Metro, and he, I'm sorry to jump in. I just want to let you guys know, I actually picked him on purpose because I remember last PD, we touched upon the student pathway. So coming with, because of this new merger, we have added opportunities for our students to become employed while they're part of LINCT. So I thought Raul was a really great example because last year he was a senior over at Queens Metro and he participated in LINCT. He's now attending Hostos and he's been hired as an ambassador. So that's that first year job that we offer LINCT students. And then next year, hopefully, if all goes well, he'll be able to become an SSL and then a coach. So I just thought he was a really good example of those students that are aware that they're in the program and take full advantage of all the opportunities that the program allots them.
So, no problem, I appreciate that. So I can see here some of the basic information. Can you show me, let's go to the Bridge to College, which is a page on the Apricot website that the Bridge College coaches are going to be working in. And this will be really interesting information for you guys because after your students leave you, I don't know how much information you have on them after they graduate out of your school. So we can see here at the start of the summer, Raul was planning on going to college at Hostos. And as we scroll down to the bottom, we can see that at the end of the summer, he is still planning on going to Hostos because things changed over the summer. So this is really interesting information to keep track on. And then when he enrolls in the fall in Hostos, we will have that. So we hear from Hostos, from CUNY in general, that he is taking classes at Hostos. So that's great to know. And if you look in the middle here, we have some information about when he was applying. Did he complete his FAFSA, stuff like this. Let's go over to the education.
Any other programs he might be a part of also is there.
Yeah, we're trying to learn as much as we can about their experience at college and our impact on it. Yeah, that'd be great. So the educational pipeline is also another page that the Bridge to College coaches were trying to fill in, but we discovered that they don't have this information. So they can find out from Raul, when he plans to graduate from high school and if he finished his application. But if Monica can scroll down, you can see that his coach was able to get his CUNY application number, but didn't know, and if you can scroll all the way down through all the colleges, and we can go to Hostos, which I think is somewhere in like the high teens there. Yeah, obviously, Raul presumably applied on a certain date to Hostos, but we don't have that information. So that's something that you guys are going to know because you shepherd these students through their application process. If you noticed, Monica had to scroll a lot through this page, and that's one of the things I want to do for you guys is clean this up so that it hopefully is not tons of pages you're scrolling through in just one small area where you very quickly say what the students' first, second, third, choice schools are when they fill in, when they complete their applications. And that will be super interesting because then we can find out for your students, did most of your students get their first choice school? Did your students who scored above a certain number on the CAT got a certain score on the CAT, did they get into their first choice school? And then that's information that can impact how you're counseling your students for future years and what schools you advise that they apply to or rank as their first choice. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question about the date, because my students sometimes, when I go work with them, I say, all right, let's submit now, and then you'll give me the money later, and then I'll mail it.
Right.
Or I will wait for you. So, for example,
Right.
I've already started doing the application, and the application has been submitted, but no financial money, nothing has been given, because I'm waiting for you to tell me who's eligible. I have
Right.
a pretty good idea with the kids knowing on your rules, but I
Right,
want to be
right.
completely final. So
Yep.
what date do you want? The date when it's been paid, or the the date when the application has been finalized,
Mhm.
submitted, but yet you know that it has not been processed.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I believe it would be the date that it's first submitted.
Yeah, it would be the day that it's first submitted, just because you guys will only be entering information into Apricot for linked students, and all those linked students that are eligible, they're all going to get the application scholarship anyway. So it isn't a situation where you're doing the application, but then it never gets paid, so then it technically doesn't get processed. If they're a linked student and you submit the application and you're only missing that final payment for processing on the CUNY end, that's all on us once we submit the application scholarships, so they will get paid, and we'll have record of when we gave that information to the admissions office. So what we would want is the data that's actually submitted on the school's end.
I see, okay.
Yeah. I hope that
Yeah, that's a really
clarifies
good
things.
question.
No, it does.
Yeah.
And we're going to be working, there are a couple among you who may already be familiar with Apricot because you worked with the Bridge to College coaches over the summer. And in that case, you might be tapped by us to help simplify this page so that it will be as quick as possible for the group at large. And the reason you guys are so important here is because those Bridge to College coaches ask the student, okay, back in November, which school was your first choice school? And the student doesn't exactly remember. I mean, I don't even remember all the schools I applied to. So that's understandable, but as the students are submitting their application, you guys know that information is current and accurate, and you can get it in there real fast. So that is the quick look I wanted to give you at Apricot. As I said, you don't need to worry about this quite yet. We're going to get it all set up for you and then give you a more in-depth training where hopefully we'll see what sort of space you have next time. We can get you on the computer so you can just click through it with me.
We definitely won't have computers next
Oh.
time. Just for the record, because I'm assuming most of you are like me, we're not a fan of this space. We're going to be at 42nd Street for every other PD in the nice big conference room, so we don't have to deal with this setup anymore.
So then we won't be able to log in on computers.
Sorry.
We won't be in a computer lab.
Unless you guys
live
bring
in
your
this-
laptops, you're welcome to bring laptops.
Yeah.
From now on, are you going to provide computers also for us?
No.
When we go, so we have to bring our laptop?
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have that capability.
I know, because you didn't write it down, that's why I didn't bring my laptop.
No, not for today. I'm talking about for
But in-
November PD. Yeah, when we do the Apricot training, I'll inform everyone if you have a laptop to bring, feel free to bring it and you can connect to our Wi-Fi. Yeah, no laptop was required today at all, or asked.
And given that, I will develop a mini guide so that you can take it with you at step by step what you're going to be doing. But we're going to be working to make this as simple and quick and painless as possible for you to get in there and give this great information that will then tie into the entire student profile that we can report back on for you. And if you ever have any questions about data, about the rosters, about testing, about Apricot, always get in touch with me. That's what I'm here for now. Thank you so much, guys.
Okay. So, again, when it comes to Apricot, more will come, hopefully, and this information will be sent out in the next CUNY LINCT newsletter, but just for a heads up, November PD is probably 98% chance going to be a training done through the Options Institute from Goddard Center. And hopefully at that point we'll also have about an hour and a half to go through the Apricot training, just so everyone kind of knows what to expect come November. But moving right along, kind of transitioning into our next goal, now we're gonna welcome Sindel Harris. She's a CUNY admissions counselor, and she's gonna start her presentation on the general admissions portion, and then later on we're going to hear from her again when it comes to foster care involved students. So I'd like to welcome Sindel. Thank you for coming. Hello everyone. The light is right over there.
I'm gonna turn the light on, it's time to wake up. So it's gonna be weird if you're like trying to break your neck to see me and then also trying to break your neck to see the presentation. So sporadically throughout the presentation, I'm gonna be walking around, okay? We'll have to search. Okay, so thank you, Monica, for having me. As you guys mentioned, my name is Sindel Harris. I am an admissions counselor for the CUNY Welcome Center. I work with all community-based organizations throughout the 5 boroughs, New Jersey, and I also specialize in youth and care. So I'm just trying to take a population of the room. You all are high school counselors, correct? Yes. Okay, cool. So if you haven't heard of CUNY before, which is weird to say, have you heard about CUNY? I'm going to basically tell you guys about the opportunities we have at CUNY, so that when a student comes up to you and say, well, what about CUNY? What are the benefits that they have? I can kind of sort of walk you through it. This is a student presentation, so I'm going to be skipping a lot of things, just so, I guess, for time. Okay, I do have time.
You're good,
so
you're good.
I won't be skipping. Okay. So CUNY basically couches an idea of finding your fit, making sure a student knows that they're not forced to go to a school. Rather, picking out a school or picking out the options of a school will better help them. So it's not as if the student is making the school has to make the student, if that makes any sense. So things to consider when you're talking to your students about college is campus styles, campus settings, the location of the actual college, the majors and academics, their social lives, and of course once they graduate, where do they plan to go with the CUNY degree. So I'm going to walk you through all of those steps today. In terms of campus styles, CUNY has 24 different colleges. They all range from suburban to rural areas to traditional schools to city-like schools. If you guys can see Baruch and Hunter, they're a little city-like. Hunter over crosses Lexington Avenue. Baruch College has this awesome city-like vertical campus. BMCC is in the heart of Manhattan. Medgar Evers is in Brooklyn. And then we have some traditional fields like Lehman College, City College with that Gothic architecture, Queens College that views the New York City skyline, and then Queensborough Community College. So we kind of make sure a student knows that CUNY is New York. New York City is CUNY. So unlike universities that have one specific campus, the good part about CUNY schools is if a student is at Lehman College, for example, but they're currently in BMCC and they want to take out a book, they can go to BMCC's library and they can take out a book. If they plan to study abroad, they currently attend Kingsborough College, community college, but they want to go to Japan with Baruch, they can do that because they're a CUNY student. So they have options. And we make New York City basically our campus through all the 24 colleges that we have under our umbrella. Does this have sound? No. Okay. It's fine. Well, actually, you can hear. Okay. No, you can't hear. So these were just a few videos of what the campuses look like. I mean, I can show you if you guys can hear, which is cool. But this is Baruch's vertical campus that I was talking about.
Welcome to the Newman Vertical Campus. It is 14 stories high with 3 lower levels. All of your classes in this building will be on this side because all of the faculty offices will be on that side. My favorite part is actually the atrium. If you're hungry, you can stop by our dining hall, or if you love your mom's cooking, you can bring your own food and heat it up in the microwave. The bookstore is also great. You can find everything you need for all your classes, including UAE textbooks and the best food here.
So in terms of counseling students, even when they let you know that they want to go to a city-like school or they want to go to a traditional style school, CUNY colleges have different or diverse campus settings. So if a student says, I want to stay in the city, I want to have that city feel, Baruch is probably somewhere that you can probably advise them to go to, or Hunter College or BMCC, as I mentioned before. But if they're thinking about, going and feeling like they're actually a college student and dorming and things like that, we have places like City College and Lehman College and Brooklyn College and College of Staten Island. So there's a vast amount of options that the student can actually choose in terms of campus styles. So now let's talk about academic programs. CUNY offers over 1,750 undergraduate programs. The things that we do not offer is fashion, electrician, marine biology, and aerospace. Everything else we offer, which is huge and it's big. So if a student is saying something along the lines of, well, I just want to get a trade. I want to just go to school for 2 years and then graduate and go specifically in my profession. We have programs that we call career-orientated programs, where a student, for example, if they're thinking about mechanics, they can get an associate's degree from Bronx Community College in automotive technology, where we have articulation agreements with BMW. So once the student graduates, if they're at the top of their class, for example, BMW scouts and looks for students at our BCC campus. So then classroom settings, that's important too, actually sitting down in a class and trying to learn the material. I'm from New Jersey, small thing about me, and I live near Rutgers. So when I was choosing colleges, I had a friend that went to Rutgers and I went to another school that was smaller. So I remember staying over at Rutgers, just a small story about me. And she had this clicker thing. And I asked her, what is that? Why are you like looking for your clicker? So she said, no, this is how we take attendance in class. So I'm like, wait, what? So she says, yeah, there's over like 300 kids in the class, so we'll click the button to say that we're attending class. Something to also think about with students and their ratio and their relationship with their actual professor. Does a student want to be just a clicker, or do they actually want to have a name? So we take pride in the fact that 70% of our classes have fewer than 30 students. The other 30% are labs, they're seminars where they will have probably 50 to 60 students. So that relationship with the teacher, where the teacher says, hey, we understand that you're having this bad day, or hey, I understand that you don't get this material, let me help you better, versus you're just a clicker. Another thing that's super important is once you leave class, of course, you have to study, you have to do papers, you have terms, you have exams, all of those things. So we take pride also in our state-of-the-art facilities. I'm not too sure if you guys all know, but CUNY just received their accreditation for their medical school. So we now have a medical school at CUNY. This is City College's science building. They hold some research and some type of studies and classrooms in that new science building. CSI also has a great lab. Queens College also has a great auditorium that they just previously built. And currently Brooklyn College is building this amazing performing arts center as well, where they'll be playing West Side Story when it opens. So if anyone likes West Side Story, you guys can come, because I'm going to So in terms of making sure that our students are well equipped and well advanced as far as research and providing research and looking into research and their academic, work, CUNY offers it. We have these facilities that the students are able to use. Some more, which is super interesting, there's a picture of Hostos Community College, and that's their dental hygienist lab. What Hostos does is they invite all of the community of Bronx, if they do not have dental insurance, to come to Hostos Community College to get their teeth cleaned. So what happens is the students, along with the actual professors, will, I don't want to call it practice, but it is practice. In medical terms, it's called practice. When a student is actually working on teeth and is actually cleaning teeth like they were supposed to do in profession. So I think that gives our students a higher up, and it also gives them some experience when they go into their fields. They're not just cleaning teeth the first day that they get there and don't know what they're doing. So let's talk about student life. Students often think that college is only about going to school and then going home, which is not the case at all. By the way, I'm not walking back and forth like I told you guys I was going to do, because my shadow will be there, and that's pretty awkward. So yeah. So students usually think that school is just going to class and then going home. But that's not the case at all. And if we're talking about resume building and we're talking about them getting jobs, I think it's important for them to think about clubs and organizations and different things that's on campus that will be able to show them or separate them from students who actually just go to class and go home. So we take pride also in the student lifestyle we have. For example, at Brooklyn College, during the summertime, we have a movie night. after sundown on the front lawn. At the bottom picture, their City College's Canoe Club. They won a competition. They also made that organization as well. So it's not like a varsity team or anything. It's an actual club or organization. And then if students feel like any of the clubs don't even satisfy them while they're at the colleges, they can make their own clubs and organizations. So at Gutman Community College, there is a club called the Chicken Cutlet Club. And students every 2 weeks literally sit around, eat chicken cutlets, and, you know, have a good time. That's cool. And I was actually calling Gutman 2 weeks ago to see if like administrators or professionals are able to come to the Chicken Cutlet Club and, you know, sit and eat chicken cutlets as well, but they told me no, so I could not go. So in terms of students thinking about the things that they want to do after school or after classes, if they're, for example, interested in creating religious clubs and religious organizations and book clubs and things like that, we have the space and we have the resources available for the students to do that. I'm sure you guys also encounter a lot of students who like sports. The good part about CUNY Sports is we are a D3 university, except for Queens College, which is a D2 college. So if a student wants to be super competitive in their sports, we usually tell them about Queens College and their D2 sports. But we take pride in our D3 sports. Although people say, D3, I don't even want to go to D3. You know, I'm trying to make it to the NBA. And then you have to sit them down and say, listen, in terms of scholarships, in terms of money, once you receive your maximum financial aid in the scholarships, or some scholarships that you'll receive from the D3, you wouldn't be paying to go to school at all. So we take pride in that as well. I want to show you guys this video because it's super motivational, and if I can take this presentation with me at home, I'll wake myself up with it. So here it is.
No one ever won a race because it was their turn. And guzzling the right sports drink never won all 3 sets. You can't talk your way through a tournament, and luck doesn't last. Real champions know that it takes more to do more, because wanting it just isn't good enough. You've got to be smarter, faster, tougher. After all, championships were easy, everybody would have them. City University of New York Athletic Conference. Learn, play, succeed.
Doesn't that make you just want to take off your pants, put on basketball shorts, and like run down 42nd Street? No? Okay. Cool, that's fine, that's fine. Don't be surprised if you see me running down 42nd Street.
With or without a chicken color?
After the 42nd Street run. So study abroad. Oftentimes I tell students, like, listen, you can go away for a semester or a year to any place in the world that you would like to go to. You can take classes, and when you come back, the classes transfer over, and you'll have a unique cultural experience. And some of them go, wow, so you telling me, miss, I can go to like Indonesia? And I'm like, yeah, actually you can, because our CUNY students do that as well. So the CUNY BA program, I'm not too sure if you guys know about the CUNY BA program, but it's where you build your own bachelor's degree. We had a student who built his own bachelor's degree over languages, and for 2 years he studied in 4 different countries. So that was Peru, Colombia, Kenya, and Germany. The 4 countries that he went to in that year. So in terms of study abroad experiences, and again, making sure that your resume is pretty lengthy in terms of, you know, getting into the professional life. I always tell students, you have that cultural experience that no one else has. When employers are looking at your resume and they see that you maintained yourself and maintained a culture of a whole another different country that has a whole different customs, they'll pick you before they'll pick someone that just went to class and went home again. So I usually talk to students more about studying abroad. They tell me like their hopes and dreams and aspirations. I'm sure that you guys won't do that now, so I'm just going to skip this. Student housing. So if students are thinking about dorming, we offer housing at majority of our 4-year colleges. So that's Baruch, Brooklyn, City College, CSI, which is the College of Staten Island, Hunter, Lehman, Queens, and John Jay. So oftentimes, especially with the students in the population that I work with, youth and care do not have housing or don't think about staying with their foster homes or the agencies that they currently are in. So they think about student housing. The downside about it is it's not covered in the tuition. It's a separate fee. It's a housing fee that comes with it, and each college has a different housing fee. So if a student either wants to live on campus or they want to live off campus, we also have those locations for them. Question?
Yeah, so will any of them have like a dining hall option, or is it just up to the student?
No, so there's dining hall options for, the students that are in campus housing. So that comes also with your room and board. That's a room and board fee, and that also comes in with your dining option. Is that the question that you asked?
Did that change? Because I know with CSI, when it first opened, they said there was no dining hall option. Like it was just housing.
No, so room and board is inclusive with your housing and your dining. So it comes into a complete package. Oftentimes they tell students who are in their second years or their third years that they don't have to take the dining package simply because they're not freshmen anymore. But mandatory freshmen have to take those dining costs. Yes. And then as far as community college goes, if a student also goes to community college, they are eligible to go into an in-campus or off-campus housing. So if they're willing to pay for the housing, they can do it as well. So say, for example, a student goes to BMCC but really likes Harlem. They will be able to go to the towers at City College and say, hey, I'm trying to dorm here, and that's how they'll make arrangements, okay? So this question after I graduate, because clearly our students are graduating at an exceptional rate, but employment opportunities are super low. So one of the questions that we always get asked is, what happens to me after I graduate? Which is a good question, but we also let them know that we have connections and networking opportunities at some of the places. Some of them go on to graduate school. So we have some affiliations with Columbia, with Yale, with Harvard Law, with the Graduate Center, and some students want actual employment options or employment opportunities where we have connections at Chase, Merck, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and the New York Times, and plenty more, of course. Fun fact, when September 11 hit and Wall Street was kind of sort of in shambles, Wall Street called Baruch College and said, hey, can we use your first floor to do all of our New York Stock Exchange and trading? So Wall Street literally picked themselves up and went to Baruch College. Can you imagine being a student and you're walking around and you randomly meet someone from Goldman Sachs and they say, hey, I like your tie. What's your name? Tell me about yourself. Do you want a job? That's the opportunities that we have at CUNY. I'm not saying I know anyone that did that, of course. I made that story up in my head. But I'm just saying as far as networking opportunities go.
Good story, good story.
Yes, thank you. Another fun fact. Does anyone watch CSI here? No. Because we're just so busy being counselors that we don't watch TV? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So for those who watch CSI, I'm not gonna point you out. It's okay. Just say yes in your head. CSI sometimes gets recorded at John Jay College. So sometimes they often pick out students to say, hey, can you be an extra in this episode? So that's also cool stuff. You don't have to tell me that you're watching. It's okay. Maybe afterwards you can come up to me and tell me. I'll be okay. So let's start talking about your students that are high achieving students. We have a college called Macaulay Honors College where we believe that if we invest in our New York City students, they would come back and provide for the community. So in the Macaulay Honors College, we give a student a full tuition, $7,500 stipend. That's for them to use any scholarship, study abroad opportunities or any internship opportunities that they need funding for, or any projects or research. And they also receive a free MacBook Pro. They get to pick classes first, they get to dorm first, and they kind of they're like the VIP of CUNY. And that's simply because we believe that these students will come back and they'll serve the communities just like we do now. So if you have any students that are super high achieving, like 94 GPA averages, 1704 SAT scores, have them consider Macaulay Honors. Does anyone watch TED Talks? I think that's more educational. It's not like CSI. Okay, see, there it is. Cool. So there was actually a TEDx CUNY that happened because of a Macaulay Honors student. And because he created or curated the entire TEDx CUNY, he now is a Fulbright scholar. So that's pretty cool too, and we pride ourselves off of that as well. So let's discuss some opportunity programs, because oftentimes I get counselors who call me and just say a whole bunch of jargon, and I'm like, who told you this? So I want to make sure that we're pretty clear about the opportunity programs and what they offer. So CUNY Start. I'm going to start with CUNY Start because I think that's important. Oftentimes students get accepted into CUNY and they actually bomb the placement test. They fail both parts. And it's not their fault. We don't want to fault them and say, well, just because you bombed them now you have to spend a ridiculous amount of money in remedial courses and you won't become a matriculated student. So CUNY Start comes in and says, hey, student A, if you pay us one easy payment of $75, you go through either a 6-week program, which is part-time, or a 12-week program, which is full-time. We'll give you all the information that you need to pass the placement test, but we'll also give you those remedial courses for that $75 fee so that you don't have to tap into your financial aid for remedial classes. The student then takes the placement test again once the 6 or 12-week course is over. There's an 88% chance that they actually pass the test, and then they become a matriculated student. So CUNY Start is an opportunity program for students to A, not spend money on remedial courses, and B, to not only help them pass the placement test, but to also equip them with the right skills to be able to succeed in a matriculated English 101 class or a college algebra class. So something to think about as well. So that's CUNY Start. CUNY Start also has a big cousin. Their big cousin is ASAP. Now, if I had a cheerleading uniform and I get to stitch one organization that I love, it will be ASAP. I will be like ASAP's cheerleader, do a few flips and jumps because I love ASAP's program.
After you run down 42nd Street?
After I run 42nd Street and eat the chicken cutlet, then I will put on my cheerleading uniform and say, woo, ASAP. Okay, so does anyone know the graduation rate of a community college student? Or, okay, Bridget.
It's about 5 to 6 years.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you know the percentage of students who graduate?
8. It's about
Every 2
22.
years or after?
Just in general.
It's about 23%.
Very close. 23%. So if you're not good with numbers, and I'm not good with numbers, someone had to actually tell me what 23% meant because I'm not really good with numbers, and that's why I'm not in a math profession. I'm sitting here talking to you guys. 23% is out of 100 kids, 23 students graduate. So ASAP says, what are the stressors or what are the reasons why our students do not graduate community colleges? So ASAP says, okay, what about financial reasons? They can't pay their term bills. So after unmet need, ASAP says, well, we'll pay for it until they graduate. Then there's the issue of transportation. Students can't afford Metro cards and they can't make it to class. ASAP says, what if we pay for Metro cards until they graduate? Then we talk about academics. ASAP says, well, why don't we have our own tutoring services outside of the school's tutoring services so the students feel comfortable talking to us rather than just some randoms at a center at BMCC, for example. They do that as well. ASAP also offers block scheduling. We oftentimes find that students get lost or they have a lost sense of direction when they have to come into college and they're taking these different classes at different times. And they have an 8 a.m. and then they don't have a class for the rest of the day. And they're like, well, shoot, I'm about to sleep all day. And then don't do their homework. We oftentimes find that students like the idea of block scheduling where they had in high school. And once they graduate, they kind of sort of want the same thing. ASAP does that as well. Cohorts. Cohorts is something like if, say, we're all buddies and we all came in at the same time, we will graduate at the same time as well. ASAP's been so successful that their graduation rate is 88%. So from 23 to 88 is a lot. Number one. Number two, ASAP is so bomb that President Obama said, listen, ASAP needs to be implemented in all the community colleges in the United States. So now,
I saw that.
yes, so now we're recognized by President Obama, which is super cool. He was at Queens College, and I think he was at Lehman College as well. So if you're thinking about counseling a student that's thinking about going to community college, tell them about CUNY Start. Tell them about ASAP. Let them know that when they apply for the online application, which I'll go through a little bit later, let them know that they also have to apply to the ASAP website as well. Yes?
That's only for community college. That's not for four years.
Here's the thing. Here's the kicker, the real kicker. ASAP's also been so successful now they're expanding to an ACE program at John Jay where they do the same model for a four-year college. And there are also talks in the works of doing that at CSI again.
Weren't they once picked to be in that program, ASAP? Years
So-
ago, weren't they selected?
Who was selected?
Students to be in ASAP, rather than you saying they applied?
Yes. So now that we receive so much funding and we have the resources available, students apply and then 9 times out of 10 they get accepted into the program. We don't accept students that are looking for like nursing or any allied health or medical field simply because lab fees and textbooks are extremely expensive and we can't cover those costs. But if you have a student who is a freshman coming in and they're thinking about going to community colleges, ASAP is the thing.
Is that a separate application or it's on?
It's a separate application. Do you want me to show it to you?
Yes.
Okay. So that's ASAP's website. It literally gives you all of the how-tos and the what-dys of ASAP. How to apply is right here. The eligibility checklist is also right here. So what differs ASAP from SEEK or CD is SEEK and CD have income eligibility things. So if your parents make under whatever amount it is, then you won't be eligible for SEEK or CD. However, ASAP does not have an income eligibility amount.
That's good to know.
Oh, yeah.
Question,
Mhm.
when should they apply for ASAP? Is it right after they apply for the CUNY application and then apply for ASAP?
Great question. So once they apply and they get accepted to the community colleges, that's when they apply. Mhm. And this is yes.
I have a question.
I'm loving the questions.
CUNY stuff. I'm sorry, I have to go back.
It's okay. Go back. Go all the way back. It's fine.
You said 88% pass. What happened to the other 12%, those who do not pass?
Right. That's a great question. So what ends up happening is they have the option of taking the week's classes again and taking the test over, but they can only take the test 2 more times. Once that happens, then there's counseling and there's advising because they want to make sure that the students is okay to go into the matriculated classes. So sometimes, and in some cases, the students end up having to take the remedial courses. But because we have such a great amount of number of students who actually pass from the enrichment program that they actually have, we want to make sure that that is kind of sort of what we push or gear the students towards. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, but I'm kind of concerned with my students who have the IEP. Because the IEP students do not need a 65, do not need to pass the regions in order to graduate.
Right.
They don't need to get a 65 in the math or the English in order to graduate.
Mm-hmm.
So now they come to college, and let's say a kid goes to BCC and is having a hard time building this up because they had a hard time in high school anyway. So take the CUNY start once, twice.
So there's literally so many times a student can take the CUNY Start and this CUNY Start program. Mm-hmm. And we have students who have IEP certificates that go into CUNY Start and they're successful. Because we make sure that those students, we mark that the student has an IEP certificate, so we give them extra support and extra time to do their work and stuff. But we also make sure that the student passes as well. That low percentage, they'll have another time to take the CUNY Start program again. But 9 times out of 10, all students can't pass, right? 100% of students cannot pass. So what ends up happening is, push comes to shove, they'll have to take those remedial courses.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I just wanted to say something about the ASAP and eligibility.
Mm-hmm.
Not only after they've been accepted to a community college, they also have to have taken the assessment test because you cannot have any more than 2 remedial needs. So no more than 2.
You can't have up to 2.
Up to 2.
That's why CUNY Start and ASAP are little cousins and big cousins, because they have to take the placement test. And once they're done with CUNY Start and they pass the placement test, they kind of sort of pipeline them into ASAP.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Okay.
So CUNY Start literally is the start button. Like you see that start button at the bottom of the computer, they start there, right? So once they're done, they say, okay, let's see your income information. You have 2 options. You can either go to CD or you can go to ASAP. And usually there's counselors at CUNY Start that allow them to figure out which one will work better for them. However, if a student is applying, they get accepted to a community college, they take the placement test, and they have no remedial needs, they can apply to ASAP right after they've been accepted to a Kingsborough or to a Queensborough. Does that make sense? Did you also have a question, sir? Yes.
No.
Okay, cool. And then SEEK and CD, they're similar to the HEOP and the EOE programs, but they're CUNY bound programs where they also base, I told you guys before, on income information. They too do things like ASAP. They do the academic support, the financial support. They also have these summer courses that they allow the students to take before they actually attend the school. That's to make sure the student is assimilated into the college, into the classes, and to knowing how classrooms will work. They also receive credits for the courses that they take during the summer, which is also cool. So again, the difference between ASAP and Seek and CD is that income portion. So oftentimes I know we have students that be like, well, they said my parents make too much money and they really don't because we really can't afford college, which is oftentimes the case. ASAP is kind of sort of the filler of the CD and Seek program. Any questions?
If a student is accepted, I had a couple of students accepted at York last spring, and then they bombed the CAT test. And so they're doing the CUNY start now. Will they be able to shift into, and they filled out yes on CD Seek on their application. Will they be able to slide into the CD Seek program at
Yes,
York?
they will. Because remember, we pipeline either with Seek or CD or with ASAP.
Okay.
So what time, push comes to shove, what ends up happening is they'll take the CUNY start classes, and then if there's a summer before that semester starts,
Right.
they'll take that summer program for Seek, and then they go into their matriculated courses.
Okay, thank you.
You up? Are there any more questions? You guys, I love questions. Yes.
CUNY starts during summer or is it?
It's during the semester.
During the semester.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yes.
I was under the impression that the SIC and the CD begins in the fall semester. So let's say a student takes the CUNY start and is ready to start regular college work in February, in the spring, so they can't really get into the CD or the SIC.
So remember, CUNY start will tell the student, because you're ready for the spring semester, you won't be able to take that summer course. So you'll be able to start in January or in February. In January, sometimes in February at Queensboro and stuff like that.
So in other words, the SIC program or the CD, well, actually, it would be more the CD program.
If we're talking about in terms of CUNY start, if a student is starting at CUNY start, there are advisors there that will tell them, either you go into Seek and CD because we know that the fall semester is starting and you can take that summer program and then go directly into the fall semester. Or if they're taking the the CUNY start program during the actual fall semester, then a counselor will say, how about you try ASAP? Because there's no summer program for the winter terms that you can go into the spring term.
Okay.
There was another question? No? So I was talking to you guys about community colleges. And if I knew about community colleges when I was in undergrad, I would definitely go to community college and then go to a 4-year because now I'm just chilling in debt. And my first 2 years was it was bad. That's why I just love telling students to think about community colleges. Fun fact, the chair is not showing you guys, but 20% of American PhD holders started at a community college, and 45% of American students are currently enrolled in a community college. So if students if they start saying, well, I don't want to go to community colleges because it's kind of like the 13th grade. Y'all hear that all the time, right? Okay. I wish I brought the presentation on community colleges because it's also awesome. But there's great, successful people who start at community colleges for the 2 years. A, because it's more affordable than a 4-year program. B, they give you more support services so that they can make sure that your grades are up to par so you can apply to that 4-year program. And C, it's just a smaller community for the students to actually create an environment where their academics are important to them. 4-year colleges, you will get lost. If you see a student that is just all over the place, like one of those students be like, I want to be a nurse, and then you check their math and science grades and it's just like zeros. I'm not saying, no disrespect to those students, of course, but thinking about community colleges and that small knit group, that small family, the small support services, going for 2 years, even telling students if they like receiving awards or recognitions at a smaller rate or smaller increments than a 4-year waiting for that bachelor's. Instead of doing like 2 years, you get that associate's degree, and then 2 more years you receive that bachelor's degree. That's also something to think about as well.
Could you email us the
I think I can. I think I can. Yeah, I should. I should be able to.
Yeah,
I have that power. Yeah, I can. Deal.
When you handle 42nd Street, I knew you
Exactly.
handled the...
And because I can do that, I'll also send you the notes, where it won't just be the actual bullets, it will also be the notes. So you can talk to your students about that too.
So that would be a big help.
Right? I think I could do that. Right? Might as well. I'm going to give you guys my card at the end so that you can email me. I can do this. Yeah, you're right. Okay. So now let's talk about the application process. Again, as I told you guys, I work at the CUNY Welcome Center, and one of our jobs is to make sure that the student's application is completed so that it can be sent to the school so that they can review them. So oftentimes I get the, Miss, can you get me into college? And I'm like, actually, no, I can't get you into college. It's up to the colleges to make that decision, okay? So something to think about in terms of talking to your students, college prep curriculums. So if they're not in AP and honors classes, which we will love to see, if they're doing great in their classes, that is also college prep curriculums. So if they have like, 80s and 90s, that's also cool. We take note of that as well. GPAs, again, are super big. SATs and ACT scores, also remember that if a student is applying to a community college, the SAT scores are not required. So oftentimes, majority of the times, and I know it's a high percentage of students who are bad test takers, and they say, I don't want to take the SATs, but I want to get into Baruch, is a conversation that I always have. And I say, well, if you don't want to take the SATs, consider going to a community college where you can receive your associate's degree at BMCC, for example, receive all 60 credits, and then transfer directly into Baruch, where they'll accept all the 60 credits, and then you only have 60 more credits to do to get that bachelor's degree from Baruch. Also a conversation that you should have with your students. A personal statement or essay that's often required at the 4-year level. If a student wants to be a higher achiever, we call those things supplemental documents, the letters of recommendation and personal statements. If they want to send those in, that's also cool. I get to read personal essays, so I love when students send them in. And then interviews. Gutman Community College offers interviews. That's one of their requirements. So if a student is applying to Gutman, consider them brushing up on their interview skills. I'm not too sure if you guys know, fun fact again, Gutman Community College model is based on the ASAP model. I forgot to tell you guys that. So consider ASAP, the entire ASAP program, for an entire college. Everyone in the college goes through the same ASAP ordeal with the cohorts, the box scheduling, the summer program beforehand, longer semesters, things like that happen at Gutman Community College. So if you have a student that really needs the extra support and really needs the advisement, consider them to go to Gutman Community College. So then the actual application. So there's one application and then up to 6 college choices. That's for the freshman application. If a student is transferring in, it's one application and up to 4 college choices. Transfer is a little bit different. You only get accepted into one school. As of a freshman, you can get accepted to all 6. You can get accepted to 4. 1, you can probably not even get accepted into none, but I don't think that's ever the case. The deadlines for fall is February 1st. So if you have any seniors right now, which right here at the bottom says apply early, please have them apply as early as possible. I'm going to give you guys my cards because if you have students who want to actually apply and they just need extra help, bring them to my office. Tell them to come to my office. I will literally sit down with them and I will make sure that their application is completed along with their transcripts so that they don't have to worry about it. You don't have to stress about it. None of that happens, okay? Review the worksheet before applying. I'm not too sure if you guys know that we do not send freshman packets to your schools anymore. Are we aware of this? Okay, so we're trying to make sure that our carbon footprint is super popping at CUNY. So we now have this option where you request the materials online. I'm going to show you that right after this. So review the worksheet before applying. Use a professional email address that you check often. I tell students all the time, please make sure it's just your first name and your last name. The email addresses that I've seen so far in my professional career is ridiculous. Just make sure that those email addresses look good. Because sometimes, and even oftentimes, students don't get accepted into school because of what their email addresses look like. Because it's a reflection of who they are. So if they have Trap Queen 456 at Yahoo, what makes you think that someone at Brooklyn College wants you at their school? And that's a serious thing. That's super serious. Is that on tape?
Yeah.
That's embarrassing. Okay.
But it's real. It's real.
Yes, it is real. If you have a social security number, use it on the application. This is important also for financial aid because you use your social security number on your financial aid. So we also want to make sure that if a student gets accepted into the school, that we'll be able to pull their application and pull their financial aid information with that one number, which is your social security number. So when a student is doing their applications, and if you guys have CUNY application days, or whatever the case may be, have them make sure they bring in the correct social security number. Because number one, if they don't have it, it's super hard for us to update the information. And number two, if they put the incorrect social security number in, it's also hard for us to change it. It takes a really long time sometimes students don't even get to go into the semesters that they choose because of the incorrect, or they don't have a social security number at all. So just make sure that that's something that's on the top of your priorities if you're doing applications with the students. Use a desktop or a laptop to fill out the application, not a mobile device. So if a student says, well, I'm just doing it on my iPhone right quick, it's not going to work. The application won't submit. Just try a desktop or a laptop. If there's no resources available, we have plenty of desktops at our office that they can actually come into and do their applications. And then have their income information available if they're applying to any of the opportunity programs like Seek and CD. I also, if you guys like, I can send you a freshman checklist that I made, because oftentimes I notice that students just like the name, username, password, social security number, income information, so they have it with them when they're actually applying. Again, I'm going to give you guys my cards, and you can just send me whatever you need, and I'll send it back to you. And then apply early. If the deadline is February 1st, I do not need students calling me January 31st asking about spots and whether or not they can get accepted, because sometimes 9 times out of 10 I cannot accommodate students. Okay? So now let's talk about financial aid and money. Yes. So as you can see, our tuition is very affordable, and a cool stat is 7 in 10 undergraduates attend CUNY colleges tuition free. That's $0. They do not have to pay anything. And I'm extremely jealous at these 7 out of 10 students because I am chilling in college debt. And 8 out of 10 graduates from CUNY colleges, they graduate debt free. Again, I'm jealous at these 8 out of 10 students. So if you're talking to students about money, and in terms of money in their financial situations, CUNY is super affordable for a student to attend. If they're thinking about going to like the University of Hawaii that charges like $65,000 out the wazoo, you have a conversation about them coming back and actually thinking about the money and what debt actually looks like. So those are the tuition rates. Filing for FAFSA, filing for TAP is super important. I'll talk about that in my foster care presentation as well. So I'm not going to talk about it too much now. And then, of course, encourage the students to come visit us. If they like what they see at Brooklyn College online, encourage them to pick up the phone and, ask for a college tour. Talk to the actual department. Talk to the professors there on site. Let them feel like they're actually going to be on campus. I always tell students, you want to go to CSI so bad, hop on the ferry, get to CSI, walk around and see if you like it. Because that's the only way that it will A, push them, and B, let them know or research more about the school. If they want to see virtual tours or whatever the case may be, have them go to cuny.edu/explore. And then let's keep in touch, of course. Here's all our contact information. We also have a cool Instagram page, and we also have Twitter now, and we also have YouTube. So there is our contact for the students, along with the telephone number and the email address. I'm not too sure if you guys know about our counselor corner, where you can call a specific number and someone is always there waiting for your phone call so that they can help you help your students better. So really quick, I told you guys that I was going to show you something. How's everyone doing? Are we awake still? Was it too much information? No? You want more information? Yay! You guys are so much of an overachiever. Good job. Okay, so really quick. So this is the CUNY undergraduate admissions page. If you guys are thinking about getting information for yourselves, we have a corner for counselors. So resources for counselors. I'm not too sure if you guys know we're currently having counselor conferences. We all know about the counselor conferences? Yes, there's one in every borough. Today there's actually one at College of Staten Island. And then next Friday, I believe, there's one at Hostos, and there's one at John Jay. So if you're thinking about attending, just click on the link and you'll be able to register. So that's one. And then I also wanted to show you guys where you request materials from. So you scroll down right here, it says place order here for your print materials. Is there anyone here that is a counselor for a CBO? Hi, how are you?
School and CBO.
Okay, great. So the good part about wherever you a counselor at, you scroll down here, and you put in your number. If you don't know your CEEB code, you can just simply put 6 zeros. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? And then you put in all the information and how many materials you need. This is where you will receive all the materials from now on. We no longer send them voluntarily anymore.
Right.
And I think that's it. I think that's it. I think. Is there any questions? Do you guys have anything that you want to say? Any burning desires, any passions? You can also tell me about like what do you want to be when you grow up or stuff. I'm here to listen. Anything else? No? I can go sit down now? I can stop talking? Okay, thank you guys so much for having me. Oh, my name! Oh my gosh, my name! So I'm Sindel Harris. I'm gonna give you my card if you really want it. If you don't want it, you don't have to take it. I'm Sindel Harris. I'm at the Welcome Center on the 8th floor. And if you want to come see me, you can stop by, say hello. You can bring me cupcakes. I like cupcakes. And chicken cutlets, right? And that's it. So I'll see you guys soon. And I'll have cards for you. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Do the same stuff over and over again.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. I'm so sorry. I just want to pass you. Okay.
Why don't I see it? Hold up. Was it? Yeah. So far, I don't know how big
You have to close the presentation.
Thanks. Thank you.
Yes.
So our next are we all good? Do we need a stretch? Are we fine? Okay. So our next presenter is Joseph Levetsky. He's actually a staff attorney from CUNY Citizenship Now. Does everyone not know what CUNY Citizenship Now is? You're going to learn today. It's actually a really, really, really great program through CUNY. And Joseph was kind enough to join us. So this portion of the presentation is going to focus on undocumented students and college access and admissions and policies around that. So I'll let him take the floor. Sit down. Yes, thank you.
Hey guys, I thought I'd just come up to the front to introduce myself. Handing out some flyers for the CUNY Citizenship Now Immigration Centers so that you know. I'm one of the immigration lawyers at CUNY Citizenship Now. I'll just talk about access for undocumented students to higher education. Because I guess you guys see a lot of undocumented students at your schools. I had a question. So how do you know that someone is undocumented if they come to you? Is it self-disclosure?
Yeah. Social worker.
So there's all sorts of issues, financial, social, cultural. Even if an undocumented student wants to go to college, it can be really difficult to do so. And we'll talk about that. And so I hope to talk for about half an hour, maybe less. And I really hope that you guys, feel free to ask questions or tell me when I'm wrong, because I don't know everything. And I'm sure you guys know a lot about this more than me. I'm just, at the very end of the presentation, I want you to try to keep in mind this question right here, which is best practices for working with undocumented students. Because I don't work with undocumented students as a high school counselor, I'm just the immigration lawyer. And I guess my goal here is to help you understand the immigration part of working with undocumented students as they prepare to go to college. So I was hoping that maybe if we have a few minutes at the end, we can kind of talk about best practices as high school counselors for working with undocumented students. And feel free to email me, that's my email address. Your students can come to me with their questions. I'm very happy to set up an appointment for them. Everything is always free. We never charge anything at all. And we have a lot of immigration lawyers who can kind of talk to your students about maybe their options, like getting a green card, things like that. So real quickly, like I said, I work for Citizenship Now. It's a nonprofit. It's always free. It's always confidential, and I think it's high quality. We have 35 locations in New York City, in the Bronx, everywhere, all 5 boroughs. Generally, when people come to us, they talk with an immigration lawyer or a paralegal, and they can ask questions about anything at all related to immigration law. We also assist with people's green card applications if they qualify for a green card. We assist with DACA. Does everyone know what DACA is?
Yes.
Okay. Last year we assisted about 13,000 people, and we have a really, really active volunteer corps at CUNY Citizenship Now, and the volunteers help us at our Saturday events. We have Saturday events to help people apply for citizenship. And every April, as you can see on the screen right here, we have what's called our call-in, which is where we go to usually Government Community College and accept calls from all across the city and elsewhere about immigration law. So that's a really good way to volunteer and get to know some people in the community. So today we'll talk about 7 things. We're going to talk about what it means to be undocumented, like the definition. I'll talk about who can go to college in the United States. Talk about federal loans and who can access them. We'll talk about, just as Sindel talked about, New York in-state tuition and out-of-state tuition. Some cultural issues that might come up when working with undocumented students. How counselors can help undocumented students go to college. And like I said, we'll talk about best practices and maybe go over some questions that you have. So what does it mean to be undocumented? Does anybody know? I mean, we talk about it so much, but there's at least a couple different definitions of what it means to be undocumented. So most people that you guys probably see came with a visa a long, long time ago and just overstayed their visa. So you can get a visitor's visa to come to the US, and you're supposed to leave less than 6 months later. But a lot of people don't. You know, they just want to come to the US with their families and start working here. For this category of people, it's actually a lot easier to get a green card sometime down the road. So just keep that in mind. There's also people, usually from Latin America, who came without a visa. You know, they entered the border without papers. That's usually through Mexico. And with those people, it's actually a lot harder to get a green card. By the way, green card just means that you're a permanent resident in the United States, which means that you have work authorization, you can apply for citizenship a few years later. You know, it's almost the same as being a citizen, but you can't vote, things like that. The second main category besides those two is what we call documented. So it's people who have DACA, of course. But it's not quite the same as having a green card in a lot of ways, actually, which we'll talk about later. If somebody does get a green card eventually, they can apply for U.S. citizenship about 5 years later, usually. So if you're undocumented, of course you can't vote in the U.S. You can't work unless you have DACA, which is a little bit different. If you have DACA, you get a social security number, but most people who are undocumented but don't have DACA do not have a social security number. So of course that makes it a lot more difficult to open up a bank account, for example, to do all sorts of stuff. If you're undocumented, even sometimes with DACA, if people have DACA too, you're basically stuck in the U.S. You know, it's really, really hard to travel. You need a very, very special permission to leave the United States and then come back. So a lot of undocumented students that you'll see, they'll have come, 10 years ago and they've never left the U.S. and they might not leave for a very long time, if ever. The main thing, as it relates to this presentation, is you have very diminished access to college. And of course, there's a lot of other things, but that's what I could think of. So I wanted to talk a little bit about who has the right to an education in the U.S. So when we talk about education, there's, two main categories. There's K through 12, and then there's college, higher education, tertiary education. So in 1982, the Supreme Court in Plyler versus Doe, they said that everyone in the U.S., if they live here anyway, has the right to an education, public school education, up to high school, finishing high school. But there is no right to go to college. And that includes public universities. So for example, before 1982, there were a lot of states, like Texas for example, that passed laws that prohibited undocumented students from going to school, which is pretty awful, right? Anyway, that's all changed now. All over the U.S., if you're undocumented, you have the right to go to, public school, high school, middle school, etc. However, even if there's no right to go to college, and also if you're undocumented, even if you have DACA, it's actually a lot harder to go to college. If people have a green card, or if they're a U.S. citizen, they can get access to federal loans and state loans. If you have DACA, there's no right to federal loans. You can't get federal loans. So how do most people, at your schools, I guess most students, if they go to college, they take out loans, right? Well, people with DACA, they can't do that. They have to take out private loans. And of course, the cost of college is increasing very, very highly every year. Even at CUNY, I think in-state tuition was about $6,000 a year. And of course, there's all sorts of other expenses. I think it's about $15,000 a year they estimate to be the expenses for going to CUNY for 1 year. So if you can't take out federal loans and if you have DACA or if you're undocumented, how can you afford to go to college? So here's an example. So this happens quite a bit. So if there's a person who's undocumented, like this guy, Luis, he was born in Senegal, and he was brought to the U.S. when he was 2. His parents brought him. He grew up in the U.S., and he acts like an American, whatever that means, and he's always believed that he was an American. But when he became college age, his parents, and he tried to apply for college, he realized that he didn't have a social security number, and his parents told him that he was undocumented. But all of his life, he had no idea. Now he can't take out federal loans. He has no savings, and neither do his parents. And he realizes that he just can't go to college because there's just no money and he can't take out federal loans. So when I came down to start working at CUNY Citizenship Now, I had no idea that this kind of thing would ever happen. But you hear this story a lot. You hear about students who try to apply for college, and all their lives they had thought that they were Americans, and then when they start to apply for college, they realize that they're undocumented because they don't have a social security number. And their parents never told them because they were afraid of, all of that stuff. Thankfully, we live in New York. Things are a little bit better here. If you have DACA, or even if you don't, there's a couple other exceptions which we'll talk about. You can still pay in-state tuition. So just as Sindel was saying, it's about $6,300 a year for in-state tuition. And if you have DACA, you're entitled to in-state tuition in New York. But if you don't, if you don't qualify for that, you have to pay out-of-state tuition, even though you've lived in New York almost your entire life. And that's about $17,000 a year. And this has been the case since 2001, when CUNY and SUNY have allowed many undocumented or documented students to pay in-state tuition. Are there any questions so far? Okay. So in New York, if you have DACA, you are entitled to in-state tuition, just automatically. However, even if you don't have DACA, if you attend a New York high school for at least 2 years, graduate, and then apply to CUNY or SUNY within 5 years of graduating, you can get in-state tuition. It's very similar to getting a GED in New York, and then you apply to CUNY or SUNY within 5 years, you're entitled to in-state tuition. So the current definition of DACA, it goes to anybody who entered the U.S., well, most people who entered the US before June 2007. So if you have students who came to the US in 2008 or after, they might not be able to get DACA. However, for them, if they go to high school for at least 2 years in New York and then graduate, they'll probably be able to get in-state tuition.
Did you say June 2007?
June 2007. If you came to the US before June 15th, 2007, you might be able to get DACA. Now, about a year ago, President Obama, he announced his new executive actions, which would expand the definition of who can qualify for DACA. And I think that he said that anybody who came before January 1st, 2010 would be able to get DACA. But there's no expanded DACA, as we call it, because it's, the Republicans blocked it basically. It's being fought out in the court system right now. So we think maybe by June 2016 we'll hear something, but who knows. So right now, everyone who has DACA came to the US before June 2007, but maybe eventually they'll expand it to people who entered before 2010. So, even if an undocumented student has access to in-state tuition in New York, of course it's really hard to afford college. I mean, if you can't take out federal loans, you have to come up with the money yourself. So conservatively, we can say that it costs about $10,000 a year to go to CUNY or SUNY, at least. So when I talk to people who don't have their papers in order, if they have DACA or whatever, and they want to go to college, and they are going to college, I find that a lot of them tend to start college late. They'll start, well, late, whatever that means, but they'll start at the age of 21, for example, because they've been working for a few years, they've been taking care of their family, they might go to school part-time, they might just take a class or two each semester, and work like crazy the rest of the time. So as you can imagine, this creates a lot of issues. I mean, it's just not the same experience that you would get if you could take out federal or state loans and go to college full-time. A lot of people who have DACA or who are undocumented, they work part-time and they go to school part-time. And they work really, really hard. A couple things to keep in mind. If you are working with an undocumented student, some of their family members might not be undocumented. So of course, anyone in the United States that's born here is a US citizen. So you see this a lot with undocumented students who have younger brothers or sisters. So in the example that I gave, the person who came here when he was 2 years old, he might have DACA, and he might have two younger brothers and sisters who were born here after they came. Well, his or her younger brother or sister is a US citizen and can afford to go to college because that person can take out loans. But the person who came here when he was 2 just has DACA and doesn't have access to federal loans. So as you can imagine, this might lead to feelings of inferiority, I would imagine. The person who came here when he was 2 can't go to college, but his brothers and sisters can. There's also some cultural issues at play. So a lot of the families that I've talked to, they value back home, there's there aren't as many opportunities as there are in the United States. So when they finally make it to America, they tend to value work over education. Working 2 or 3 full-time or part-time jobs and just saving up a bunch of money rather than investing in their education. A lot of people will send money back home and they might not invest in their children's education. So as it relates to your jobs, I think it might be worthwhile looking into working with the parents to try to educate them on the importance of investment in a college education, because they might not understand this. Now also, this is just something that I've noticed. When people talk about going to college in New York, you have choices between basically SUNY and CUNY. Well, SUNY schools are mostly upstate, right? But I'm from upstate, and I can tell you that almost nobody knows what a non-documented student, really has to deal with. Here in New York, it's just part of life, so we know a lot about it. But upstate, it's just completely different. It's, you don't have access to the resources that you do in here if you're an undocumented student. You need a car, so A lot of our students, they've never driven in their lives, and they're not going to have a car when they go upstate. So I would say, and maybe you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a tendency toward going to CUNY if you're undocumented. Okay, so what can we do practically speaking to help our students who are undocumented prepare for college? Well, first, and this is just a practical thing, I really, really recommend that they talk to somebody at CUNY Citizenship Now. You can always email me and I'll set up an appointment for them. It's always free. And the reason that this is important is because just by talking to an immigration lawyer, you can help figure out what's going on with your situation, you can figure out your options. A lot of people actually, I don't know the exact percentage, but it's at least 20%. A lot of people who have DACA actually do qualify for a green card in one way or another, or they qualify for something. Now specifically, there's something called Special Immigrant Juvenile Status. Does anyone know what this is? Okay, so in New York, if you're under 21, you're considered a minor. Now Special Immigrant Juvenile Status is, you see this a lot with people who came here when they were very young. Maybe they came with their mother, for example, and they've never met their father in their entire lives. They have no idea who their father is, they have no contact. Well, in that case, in New York at least, if you're under 21, even if you're undocumented or if you have DACA, you might qualify for a green card. Because Special Immigrant Juvenile Status says that if somebody is under 21 in New York, and if one of their parents abandoned them, or neglected them, or abused them, then they qualify for a green card, or at least they might. I've done this a couple times with a couple students, and they both have their green cards now, but before they had no idea. So just watch out for that, Special Immigrant Juvenile Status. If the student that you're talking with maybe just doesn't have any contact with his father or with his mother, or if they have a really hard home life, please feel free to email me and I can talk to them and see if they qualify for a green card based on Special Immigrant Juvenile Status. At CUNY, we have a student organization called the CUNY Dreamers. So the CUNY Dreamers are really awesome. They all have DACA, I think, and they're a student advocacy group for undocumented issues. The president is Monica Sibri. That's her email address. And you can also contact Jennifer. And I think it might be a good idea for your students to maybe contact, or you guys can contact Monica or Jennifer. And I'm sure that they'd be happy to speak with your students to kind of go over what it actually means to apply for college if you have DACA or if you're undocumented, kind of go over the process, special things to watch out for. That's what the CUNY Dreamers are there for, and I'm sure that they'd be happy to speak with your students. Yep.
Are these students?
Monica and Jennifer, yes, they're students. The CUNY Dreamers are all students, yes. They go to CUNY, and most of them tend to have DACA. And they advocate for undocumented students' issues. And they're very, very active and happy to speak with the community at large. Now, the other thing that we can do to help our undocumented students go to college is guide them to scholarships. So I've looked into it, and there are scholarships out there, but and a lot of the scholarships do not require a person to be documented. But unfortunately, some of them are pretty tough to get. Just realistically speaking, generally, for your students, they're not going to be able to get that much money in scholarships. However, there is a scholarship called the Dream US, which is great. It's set up by CUNY. They give $25,000 for first-time college students who have DACA to go to CUNY. And I think you have to maintain a certain GPA. But I think the Dream.us is probably somebody's best bet if they want to stay in New York anyway, and they want to go to college, and if they have DACA. You can also go online and just search, New York scholarship, undocumented students, and you'll probably get a few directories. But like I said, overall, I think it's going to be the case that people, if they don't get the Dream.us scholarship, then it's pretty tough to get scholarship money, just generally speaking. So that's about it. We'll leave time for questions. but I was wondering if anybody had any ideas for best practices for working with undocumented students, things that you guys have noticed. Monica, do you have any ideas?
I think a lot of times, at least in my experience with undocumented students, one of the barriers that often comes up is family responsibility. So, you know, if their parents or their caretaker, whoever the guardian is, knows that they're undocumented, sometimes the family structure is a little bit different, expectations, and a lot of the times those students kind of already written off college, so it's a different, you know, you already have a tough time motivating students who have easier accessibility to higher education. Sorry if I'm in the corner. With undocumented students, a lot of the times they've already written it off, you know, so having that conversation with them about there still are resources out there for you to enter college. It isn't, you know, a done deal. You don't have to go into just finding a trade. Oftentimes I find that, you know, I don't know if, my background is social work, but I'm assuming kind of you guys are aware of this. I find motivational interviewing works really well when it comes to like internalizing that external motivation that guidance counselors and teachers often give them, because it helps them kind of come to a place where they realize this is something I actually want to do, and then when they're given the resources, they know they can do it. So that's just, in my experience working with undocumented students, a challenge, and then kind of a technique that I use when working with them also.
I think two sides, I think, you know, one of it is a lot of the students that I've worked with in families, it's also they're just as eager to try to make it right. So there's a lot of family participation, but I also think that letting the families know that it's a process, because this is something you can't start you know, September of junior year. You have to start, or excuse me, senior year. A lot of the meetings that I have with families, you know, sophomore, junior year, because it's going to take a year or so for stuff to come through. So it's not a quick process. So I think even as high school and college counselors here, you know, these are all options, but you can't wait until September, October to start that senior year.
Yeah, so starting a lot earlier.
I think making sure that, you know, those students know that there's a safe space in school. So whenever I'm making presentations, you know, I'm always like, you know, when we talk about social security numbers, I'm like, and if you don't have one, or, you know, you're not sure about your status or anything, please see me in my office, let's talk about it. But I always try to make sure that they know that there are options. And then from there, you just try to work with the individual, you know, students. One thing we've tried to do at our school is we have a little bit of funding, and so we try to make sure that those students have access to some type of employment, whether it be like an internship, but that, you know, gets paid. And so actually one of our students has been working with us for 3 years now. She started at CUNY Start, and now she's matriculating at BCC. But, you know, she's working and, you know, trying to go to school, so it's difficult.
I think the early intervention piece is really important. With regard to that special status, that special juvenile status, we've actually had some luck with that with some of our students. So I think we've got the early you try the better. My understanding is that it all goes through family court.
Yeah,
and
family court.
Younger the kids are, the better chance they might have of actually having that work for them.
Yeah.
So that's an important question, like when I'm dealing with students, to ask about the family dynamic and if there's a parent missing.
So when I did the special immigrant juvenile status cases, one of the boys was from Honduras, and he entered the country with false papers at JFK, and then he had never met his father in his life. So we went to the family court, and the judge kind of signed an order saying that the father had abandoned him, and then he got his green card. The other girl was from Mexico, and she came across the border with a people smuggler, and her parents were back in Mexico, and, you know, they didn't see each other that much, or at all actually, so she got a green card as well.
One of the issues we dealt with that is that one of the kids felt guilty, you know, because his parents were back in Guyana, and but they hadn't necessarily abandoned him. Like, they still talked from time to time. They just didn't see each other. So he had to sign an affidavit saying that he was abandoned, and he felt bad about that.
Yeah, that's true.
It's
So
a
that was
whole
kind
emotional
of some
piece that
counseling.
goes with it too. Yeah. And I think just to kind of piggyback, so as most of you know, we're really big with, on LINCT to Success side, we're really big with the whole peer influence and peer mentor model. I mean, research shows it's very, very effective. So another thing that I don't know if it's any of you guys in here, but some of our partners just in emails back and forth, going back to the CUNY Dreamers, what they do is they have CUNY Dreamers come and present kind of a similar but more student-focused presentations at the school. So if that's something you're interested in, reach out to the CUNY Dreamers, because sometimes having a documented, I love that, I never heard that before, a documented student stand in front of them and say, you know, I'm a DACA student, I went through this process, it has a different impact than kind of just going through a checklist or going through something with a counselor. Not to say that, you know, that component isn't impactful, but, you know, it hits a different mark, so I would definitely encourage that if you think that's something that, you know, your students or your school could really benefit from. Shoot them an email. I've got a couple emails from Monica. They're always so eager to kind of get out in the field and really work one-on-one with their peers, and their presentations are really, really powerful, and they're very knowledgeable, even though they're students. They've been through the process and they know it inside and out. Grace?
I have a question. I have a student who qualifies completely with DACA. I just noticed that 2 weeks ago. However, there is a component that you have to pay, I think $400 or $500 for the application. And she told me that her parents can't pay it. Is there any way that we could get a scholarship or something, or maybe financial aid or something for half? I mean, I just wasn't too sure, and I thought that I...
So in the past, there's a nonprofit called the International Rescue Committee, and they've sometimes paid the fee for DACA. So if you want to get DACA, you have to pay $465. And there's no waiver, except in very, very special circumstances if you're homeless.
What was the name again?
Well, the nonprofit that did it before, that paid the fee before, is called the International Rescue Committee. So, but as far as I know, there's no nonprofit, at least in New York City, or any organization in New York City that's paying the DACA fees. And I know this stuff pretty well, and I haven't heard of any scholarships for DACA, to pay the fee for DACA.
I'm not 100% sure, but I would also check out Make the Road New York. They're Make the Road New York. They have Brooklyn, Queens, and I believe Bronx offices. They're a huge nonprofit around immigration, but they also have college, workforce, work readiness, a bunch of youth programs, and they started off as a grassroots advocacy group. Like, you would see them out, you know, during protests and stuff, and they kind of built themselves up to a really recognizable nonprofit, and they've moved away from the CBO component because now they're all over, and they have a really big immigration sector. And so I would check them out. I don't know if they would necessarily be able to provide waivers, but I know they have a lot of great immigration resources.
Maybe you can ask the PTA. They have money. And they have scholarships.
The PTA, she said.
The PTA.
Parent Teacher Association.
You know, I spoke to my principal and said that, you know, we really can't just simply pick one person out to pay. It was just, it really was a little bit of, you know, it's a bit difficult to just say, okay, we pick one when there's so much, you know, things to do.
Paulina?
In our school, we used to use La Fuente before, but they ran out of money this year, so they closed down. So I had connections with New York State Youth Leadership Council. They also provide support and you know, the road to the documentations. They also provide not fee waivers, but they'll provide some sort of monetary to pay the lawyer fees. Also, New York Times Media, I don't know if you guys ever use that. New York Times Media is, if your school has a CBO in the building, they could sign up for New York Times Media. They can provide numerous amounts of monetary to whatever the needs are, if it's to pay a cotton bill, the rent, or whatever. They provide that type of system to the schools.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Angelique, sorry,
I
Lilian.
know everything about DACA. What's the requirement for? Oh, I'm
And
glad I
that's
thought I was
it.
the only one in the room. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Just explain
What's the
that.
requirement to get DACA?
DACA is, it's for people who came here when they were children, basically. You had to have come before the age of 16. And you had to have come, as it currently stands, before June 15th, 2007.
Sorry.
And you had to have been out of immigration status as of, I think, June 2012. Anyway, so it's basically for people who came before they were 16, before June 2007. And with DACA, if you apply for it and if you get DACA, you get a social security number and work authorization. And it's also permission from the US government to be in the United States. And with DACA, you can also apply for a travel permission back to any country, actually, not even your home country. And at CUNY Citizenship Now, we definitely help with DACA, everything about it. If people have DACA, we also help with their travel permission application to leave the country and then come back. So that includes study abroad, for example. If you have DACA, you can do study abroad. It's pretty easy, actually.
With DACA, you had to come into the country legally, though, right? Or does it count if you came in illegally?
Well, you can apply for DACA if you overstayed your visa, even if you enter, with inspection legally.
Oh, I'm sorry, but you had to have gone through inspection in order to be eligible for DACA, right?
For DACA, it's for people who enter legally and, not legally, through the border, basically.
And is there a time limit when that would expire?
DACA, it's usually valid for 2 years or 3 years, and you have to renew it every couple of years, every 2 or 3 years. So unfortunately, we don't know if the next president is going to continue it, which we understand is a big issue, but as it currently stands, President Obama is going to continue DACA at least until he's out of office, and then basically it's up to the next president to determine if DACA will continue. So President Obama, of course, will leave office in January 2017. So we'll have DACA at least until then. And there's also something else called DAPA, D-A-P-A, and that's for basically parents of Americans or parents of people with a green card. And that would be the same, almost the same thing as DACA, and it would give the parents of Americans work authorization and permission to be here.
Do you guys assist with that paperwork as well, or?
Yeah. Oh yeah, we do DACA and everything. We do citizenship, we help with DACA, everything about it.
Now, how would it work if my student is an American citizen, but her parents are undocumented? I mean, it would go on the DACA, but how would the process work? I know they can leave it to.
I think you're probably talking about DAPA, which is for
right.
parents of Americans.
Right.
But right now, DAPA, which is different from DACA, DAPA, D-A-P-A, is being fought out in the court system. We think we might hear something by June 2016, so a long time from now. But as it currently stands, there is no DAPA. It's just being fought out in the court system, which is unfortunate. But it would help people who are parents of American citizens get their work authorization and travel permission and all of that.
Any other questions, comments, any other resources we might have in the room that you want to share? No? Thank you, Joseph.
Thanks, guys.
Back up some more. Yay! One more time.
May I ask you something as a lawyer? I can remember a situation
You guys can have some time to shake off and chill. If there's any questions that you have specifically for me,